Lillian Carter had lived her whole life believing a lie. Her father had always told her that her mother had died in a tragic accident when she was just a little girl. But one day, she discovered an old letter hidden in her father's study, one that changed everything. It revealed a truth so dark, so twisted, that it shattered her entire reality. Now, standing in a courtroom, she was ready to confront the man who had deceived her all these years. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with tension. Judge Harrison, a stern man in his 50s, adjusted his glasses as he looked at the young woman standing before him. Lillian Carter, now 21, stood at the witness stand, gripping a worn-out letter in her trembling hands. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she had come too far to back down now. Lillian, voice shaking, "Your Honor, my father lied about my mother's death. And now I finally know why." A murmur spread across the courtroom. At the defendant's table, Richard Carter, her father, sat still. His sharp blue eyes, once filled with warmth, now looked cold and unreadable. Judge Harrison's eyes narrowed. "Miss Carter, that is a serious accusation. Do you have any proof?" Lillian took a deep breath and held up the letter. "I found this in my father's study. It proves that my mother didn't die in an accident, she was taken." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. 15 years ago. A 6-year-old Lillian sat on her bed, clutching her teddy bear. Her father knelt beside her, his face full of sorrow. "Richard, softly, sweetheart, Mommy had an accident. She's gone." Lillian's lip quivered. Tears welled up in her innocent eyes. "Young Lillian, but she promised to tuck me in tonight." Her father sighed, brushing her hair back. "I know, baby. But she's in heaven now." The scene faded as reality snapped back to the present. Back in the courtroom, Lillian unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. "Richard, I can't stay silent anymore. If anything happens to me, please tell Lillian the truth. Her mother was taken, not dead." A collective gasp spread across the room. Richard's jaw tightened. Judge Harrison leaned forward. "Miss Carter, do you have any other evidence?" Lillian's voice grew stronger. "Yes. I did my own research. I found medical records proving my mother was alive for years after she supposedly died. She was kept in a private mental institution, until she mysteriously disappeared." Shocked whispers filled the courtroom. Richard finally stood, his lawyer shifting uncomfortably beside him. "Richard, firmly, I did it to protect you, Lillian. Your mother, she wasn't well." Lillian's hands clenched into fists. "That's a lie. I found the records, she was completely fine before she was sent away. You wanted to get rid of her." The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Carter, if this is true, you could be charged with wrongful imprisonment and fraud." Richard remained silent, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. A few weeks later. Lillian stood in a cemetery, staring at a tombstone. Her mother's name was engraved on it. But something was wrong. The date of death was only a few years ago. Her heart ached. "I was too late," she whispered. Suddenly, a soft voice came from behind her. "Woman, gently, Lillian." Lillian turned, and her breath caught in her throat. A woman stood before her, her features hauntingly familiar. Her mother's eyes. Her mother's face. Lillian, gasping, "Mom." The world spun. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Lillian stood frozen, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. The woman before her had the same emerald green eyes she had seen in old photographs, the same warm smile she barely remembered. "Lillian," whispers, trembling, "and Mom." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, it's me." Lillian stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, this isn't possible. I saw your grave." Her mother, Eleanor Carter, took a step forward. "That grave is a lie, just like everything your father told you. Tears streamed down Lillian's face as confusion and disbelief clashed inside her. Then where have you been all these years? Her mother's lips trembled as she spoke. I was locked away, Lillian. Your father made sure I disappeared. Eleanor led Lillian to a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of the world. As they sat in a corner booth, Eleanor took a deep breath, her hands shaking. Your father was never the man you thought he was. He wanted power, control, and I was in his way. Lillian's hands clenched into fists. He told me you were mentally unstable. That he had no choice. Eleanor gave a bitter laugh. Unstable? My only crime was discovering his secret. Lillian's stomach twisted. What secret? Eleanor hesitated before whispering, your father, he had someone killed. A political rival. I found out and threatened to expose him. That's when he turned on me. Lillian gasped, horror sinking in. Eleanor's voice broke as she continued. He faked my death and had me locked away in a private institution, bribing the doctors to keep me there. Lillian, shaking her head, but if that's true, how did you escape? Eleanor's eyes darkened. I didn't. Someone helped me. Someone on the inside who knew the truth. Lillian leaned in. Who? Eleanor hesitated before whispering a name. Judge Harrison. Lillian's breath caught. The judge handling my father's case? Eleanor nodded. He knew your father's crimes went deeper than just me. And now, it's time to bring him down. The next day, Lillian stormed into the courtroom. Richard was already there, calm and composed, his lawyer by his side. He smirked when he saw her. Finally come to your senses, Lillian. She took a deep breath and held up a new file. No. I've come to end this. Judge Harrison looked at her curiously. Miss Carter, what new evidence do you have? Lillian turned to Richard, her voice strong and clear. I know everything. You faked my mother's death. You locked her away. And now, she's back. Gasps filled the courtroom as the doors swung open. Eleanor Carter walked in. Richard's face drained of color. For the first time, he looked afraid. Richard's lawyer scrambled to object, but Judge Harrison raised a hand. Mr. Carter, you are now facing charges not just for wrongful imprisonment, but for attempted murder, fraud, and corruption. You have the right to remain silent. Richard clenched his fists, then smirked. You think this is over? You have no idea who you're dealing with. Lillian stood tall, her mother beside her. Oh, I do. And this time, you're going to pay for everything. As the guards took Richard away, Lillian finally felt the weight lifting from her chest. She turned to her mother, tears in her eyes. We're free now. Eleanor pulled her into a tight embrace. Yes, sweetheart. We are.